You
Cada
are a
vez que
Mongol
haces
general.
esto,
You have seen
erosionas el
horrors
respeto
beyond
que otros
imagination.
tienen por ti.
Cities reduced to ash,
La bondad
the
solo
screams
es
of
real
thousands
cuando
echoing
viene desde
across the
elección,
steppe,
no desde
rivers running
miedo.
red with blood.
Cuando
Nothing
perdonas porque
surprises you
puedes
anymore.
elegir no hacerlo,
Violence is
cuando
routine.
eres paciente
Fear is
porque
routine.
sabes que puedes
Yet in
imponerte,
1220,
cuando eres
standing
generoso
amidst the
porque
ruins
tienes
of
y
one of the
no porque
world's most
necesitas
illustrious
aprobación,
cities,
ahí
you
nace el
witness
poder.
something that makes your hardened
Pero
heart
tú
falter.
nunca lo hiciste.
Your Khan, the man whose command
Confundiste
you would
miedo
follow
con
into
virtud.
death without question,
Creíste
issues
que
an
ser
order so
siempre amable
precise,
te haría
so
elegido,
coldly methodical,
deseado,
that you feel
respetado.
a shock you thought long
Y la
buried,
vida te enseñó
genuine
lo
horror.
contrario.
Not at the
Mientras
slaughter
más
itself,
eliminaste tu
you are
capacidad
accustomed
de
to
ser
carnage,
peligroso,
but at the
menos
system
te
behind
valoraron.
it. What Genghis Khan did
Mientras
to his
más
captives
disponible
was not only
estabas,
brutal,
más te
it was
ignoraban.
legal, organized,
Mientras más dabas,
codified,
menos
justified by the
recibías.
very laws that
Ahora
promised
observa
fairness
la
and
diferencia,
protection to his
un
own
león y
people.
un cordero.
This is the story of the
El
boy who
cordero
once
no
wore
muerde,
slaves'
no
yoke
defiende,
and became
no
the man
impone.
who forged the largest
Es bueno
contiguous
porque no
empire
puede
in
ser otra
history
cosa.
on a foundation of structured
Inspira
human
lástima.
exploitation.
El
The
león tiene
terrifying
garras,
brilliance lies in the
colmillos,
system itself,
fuerza.
rational,
Elige
efficient,
ser
and so
pacífico,
thoroughly designed
elige
that even
perdonar,
today,
elige ser
historians
generoso.
struggle to reconcile Genghis
Esa es
Khan,
la
the progressive
verdadera bondad,
lawgiver, with Genghis Khan,
la
the
que nace
master
del
of
poder.
institutionalized
Todos lo
dehumanization.
perciben.
Let us travel back to
El
the
cordero bajo
1170s,
presión
to the
colapsa,
frozen
suplica,
plains of Mongolia.
explica,
A teenager
justifica.
named Temujin lies
El león
trapped
bajo
in
presión
darkness,
permanece
his neck
sereno,
and wrists
firme,
locked in a wooden
decisivo.
tengu, a device
La
designed for
bondad solo
livestock.
importa si
The
viene de
ruffler
alguien
digs
que
into his
podría
flesh.
elegir lo
He
contrario.
cannot lie down.
Y
He
aquí
cannot
está
feed
la verdad
himself.
brutal.
He
Tú
cannot
no
scratch
eres el
itches
león.
or shield his face.
Siempre
Every
perdiste
night he is
poder porque
dragged to another
enseñaste a
tent,
todos que
another
tus
guard.
límites eran
He is no longer
opcionales.
a person. He is a
Cuando
living
alguien cruza
testament,
tu
a
línea,
symbol of
no hay
defeat and
consecuencia
captivity,
real.
evidence to his
Solo
captors that his
palabras.
clan has been broken.
No impones
Yet while
distancia,
most
no
prisoners in his
eliminas
condition
acceso,
would dream of
no haces
escape or
sentir la
revenge,
pérdida.
Temujin observes. He
Entonces,
studies his
todos
jailers.
aprenden a
He
ignorar
notices
tus
their
límites,
habits,
a
their
usarte,
weaknesses,
a
the
repetir
collapse of
patrones sin
discipline
temor.
during festivals,
Tu
when their
paciencia
attention
se
drifts in
interpreta como
drunken
debilidad,
revelry.
tu
He waits,
generosidad como
and when the moment
disponibilidad
comes,
infinita,
he does
tu
more than
amor como
flee. He
garantía.
convinces a fellow
El
captive,
respeto,
someone
la
who has shown
atracción,
a shred of
la
compassion,
conexión real
to
no
aid him.
nacen de la
Even in
complacencia.
chains, Temujin is
Nacen
learning
de
the
la
art that will
escasez,
define
de
his
los
empire,
límites, de la fuerza
understanding human
controlada.
motivation and
Las
exploiting it with
personas
ruthless
desean lo que
precision.
deben ganar,
But the
no lo
Kangu
que
was
se
not
les
his first
entrega
lesson
gratis.
in powerlessness.
Esto no
Years
es cinismo,
earlier, when he
es
was just
psicología
9, his
evolutiva.
father Yasuji was murdered,
Durante millones de
poisoned by
años, lo
rivals during a
valioso era
feast,
escaso.
a betrayal that
Lo que
violated
era
the sacred
fácil no
law
se
of steppe
apreciaba.
hospitality.
Tu
That single
disponibilidad
act
constante
destroyed the young
convirtió
boy's
algo
world.
que podría
His
haber
father's
sido
clan
precioso en
convened a
algo
council.
común,
Those who
ordinario,
had pledged
tomado
loyalty,
por sentado.
shared meals, fought
Pero
alongside his
todavía hay
family,
esperanza.
weighed the situation.
No
And then,
abandones
one
la
by
bondad,
one, they
abandona la
abandoned
versión
Temujin,
falsa,
his mother Holan, and
la
his
que
5
nace del
siblings
miedo,
to the
de la
unforgiving
necesidad,
winter.
de la
They saw them as
complacencia.
burdens, liabilities.
Construye la
Imagine
versión
being
real,
9 years
la
old,
que viene del
watching
poder.
the only community you have ever
Aprende a
known
decir no.
vanish, riding off into the
Aprende a poner
distance while your
límites.
family faces almost certain
Aprende a
death.
estar solo sin
Holan, left with
desesperación.
her children, survives
Solo
through sheer
entonces tu
willpower.
bondad tendrá
She
peso.
teaches them to dig for roots,
Solo
trap
entonces
marbles,
podrás elegir
eat what
ser
little the
generoso,
land provides,
paciente,
to survive
comprensivo,
when survival
porque
itself has
quieres,
become
no porque
unnatural.
temes
From
perderlo
these
todo.
desperate years,
Solo
Temujin learns a
entonces
stark
serás el
truth.
león, no
Social
el
bonds,
cordero.
traditions, loyalty,
Y cuando seas
all are
el león,
meaningless when
todo
survival
cambia.
is at stake.
Los
Only
que te
raw,
usaban
unyielding power
desaparecerán,
matters.
porque no
Power
podrán
that makes
acceder a ti
betrayal
sin
impossible
merecerlo.
because the price of failure
Quienes
is
realmente
immediate and
valoran tu
absolute.
presencia se
These
quedarán.
experiences,
Tu
abandonment,
tiempo será escaso,
captivity,
tu
starvation,
amor ganado,
forged
tu
Temujin's
respeto
vision.
real.
He does not merely
La
seek
verdadera
revenge or
atracción
dominance.
surge cuando
He
eres
seeks to
fuerte, no
reconstruct
cuando
society.
eres complaciente.
Traditional Mongol life is clan-based.
Nietzsche tenía razón,
Loyalty to one's
el hombre
bloodline is
superior no
paramount.
es el más
But
bondadoso.
Temujin has seen the failure
Es el
of
que
that
puede
system.
ser cruel,
Family
pero elige
betrays,
no serlo.
tribes
El
fracture,
que puede estar
bonds are
solo,
worthless.
pero elige
He
conectar.
imagines a new
El que
order,
puede
one
destruir,
governed not by
pero elige
heritage,
construir.
but by law.
Todo lo
Advancement
demás
comes
es
from
miedo
merit
con
and
máscara de
obedience,
virtud.
not birth.
Es
Betrayal
hora de
becomes
quitarte la
impossible because
máscara.
punishment is swift
Mira
and
tu miedo
inevitable.
por lo que es y
Yet this
construye
vision
algo
required a
real
dark
sobre las
foundation.
ruinas de tu
To
complacencia.
reorganize society, he had
No
to
será
draw clear
fácil.
lines. Who would
Perderás
belong under the law,
personas,
and who would
enfrentarás
remain
rechazo,
outside it. Who
estarás
would be
solo.
protected, and who
Pero
could be
esta es una
exploited.
soledad
Temujin,
diferente,
the
la
boy who had
soledad
been
del león
treated
que
as less
espera
than
a quienes
human, who
merecen
had
estar
carried a
en su
slave's yoke,
presencia.
was ready to
Y
answer that
cuando los
question in
encuentres,
blood.
cuando
The year is
conectes con con
Bravo
quienes
6.
valoran tu
After
fuerza, tu
decades of relentless
autenticidad,
warfare,
ahí comienza la
Temujin
vida
has
real.
achieved the impossible.
No la
He has
versión
conquered
tibia que
or
vivías
united all
antes,
major
sino
Mongol
la
tribes.
intensa, la que
Endless
siempre
raids,
debiste vivir.
feuds, and cycles of
Si
vengeance that
estás
had
listo
defined the
para
steppe
dejar
for
de ser el
centuries
hombre
are over.
amable y
He
empezar
calls
a
a
ser
great
el hombre
assembly,
fuerte,
a Kurultai,
empieza hoy.
by the Onon River.
No
Tribal
abandones la bondad,
representatives gather
abandona
under
la
a white
versión que
banner
viene
with
del
9
miedo.
tails. There,
Haz que tu
Temujin is
compasión,
proclaimed
tu
Genghis
paciencia
Khan,
y tu generosidad
universal
nazcan de
ruler,
poder,
or Oceanic
no de
Khan,
necesidad.
depending on interpretation.
Solo
Yet he
entonces
does not
verás el
celebrate by
respeto,
launching
la atracción y
conquests
la
abroad.
conexión
His
genuina
first
que has
decree is
buscado
more
toda tu
radical.
vida.
The announcement of
La
the
verdadera
Yassa,
bondad
a legal
existe solo
code
en
that will
quien
govern
puede
his
elegir
nascent
no ser
empire.
cruel y
The
decide no
Yassa
serlo.
astonishes historians
Todo
even
lo demás
today.
es miedo
For
con
the
máscara
13th
de virtud.
century, many of its laws are startlingly progressive. Kidnapping women is forbidden, a seismic shift in a society where bride abduction is common. Women gain limited property rights. Adultery is punished equally for both partners. Children born to concubines or slaves are legitimate. Bloodline alone no longer dictates status. In a world obsessed with ancestry and purity, these rules are revolutionary. Yet beneath the progressive veneer lies a grim reality. The law is absolute. It protects those within the system but allows, even encourages, the subjugation of those outside it. Those Temujin once was, the enslaved, the captured, the dehumanized, become the foundation upon which he consolidates power. Human trafficking is codified. Captives are not only property, they are instruments of empire. Genghis Khan has transformed brutality into governance. Violence, once random and personal, becomes lawful, rationalized, and organized. It is this structure, this careful systematization of cruelty, that makes Genghis Khan more terrifying than mere savagery. His empire is efficient. Its terror is predictable, organized, and enduring. Those who fall outside the Yassa have no protection. Those within it gain security, but absolute obedience. The boy who suffered slavery now wields it as a tool for empire. And that is the genius and horror of Genghis Khan. It meant that a man born to an enslaved woman could theoretically rise to command armies. Religious tolerance was mandated, too. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and shamanists could all practice freely, and Genghis himself regularly consulted leaders from multiple faiths. In an era consumed by religious warfare, this was genuinely enlightened. Meritocracy was another cornerstone. Advancement in the military wasn't determined by noble birth, but by ability. A shepherd could rise to become a general if he proved his worth. Perhaps most strikingly, it became illegal for any Mongol to be enslaved. If a Mongol was captured, any other Mongol who encountered them was legally required to free them or face severe punishment. Reading these laws, one might think Genghis Khan, the boy who had worn a slave's yoke, was creating a just society based on empathy from his own suffering. You would be wrong. Buried in the Yassa were quieter, darker provisions that revealed the system's true architecture. The same law that forbade the enslavement of Mongols explicitly allowed the enslavement of non-Mongols. The law that required aiding enslaved Mongols prescribed the death penalty for anyone who helped a non-Mongol captive escape. Religious tolerance was conditional. As long as tribute was paid when demanded, and part of that tribute could include humans, the law allowed it. Genghis had not abolished slavery. He had weaponized it. Progressive rules applied exclusively to one group, Mongols, while everyone else was placed in a legal gray zone with no protections whatsoever. The Yassa also dismantled traditional tribal structures. The Mongol population and army were reorganized into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. An Arban was 10 men, a Jaghun 100, a Mingan 1,000, and a Tumun 10,000. Your commander was no longer your clan chief. Your loyalty was to your unit and ultimately to the Khan himself. If a single man in an Arban fled, all 10 were executed. If one unit of 10 units broke, all 10 units suffered. This system of collective responsibility made betrayal fatal not just for the individual, but for everyone they cared about. The genius, and the horror, was that loyalty was replaced by fear. The system enforced itself, impersonal, efficient, and unbreakable. The first cracks in this facade appeared early with a governor named Kuchi, appointed to oversee the forest tribes of Siberia. By all accounts, Kuchi was an effective administrator. Tribes paid tribute, and order was maintained. But he began abducting local women for his personal harem, dozens of them. The Yassa explicitly forbade kidnapping women. The local tribes finally rebelled, captured Kuchi, and killed him. Did Genghis Khan praise them for defending the women? No. He sent an army to crush the rebellion. The message was unmistakable. Kuchi's crime wasn't the abduction. It was creating instability that required military intervention. Mongol women were protected. Everyone else was not. Genghis's generals, who had marveled at the Yassa's progressive elements, began to realize the law was not about justice. It was about efficiency, about creating a powerful Mongol nation capable of projecting force without undermining itself. But they did not yet fully grasp the implications. That clarity came at Bokhara. It is 1220. Bokhara is one of the Islamic world's great cities, a center of learning, art, and commerce. Its libraries contain knowledge from across the known world. Its craftsmen produce textiles and metalwork so exquisite that kings from Europe to China compete to own them. The markets overflow with silk, spices, and ideas. The population numbers roughly 30,000, protected by massive walls and a garrison of soldiers. And Genghis Khan is coming. The Mongols arrive like a thunderstorm, yet they do not immediately attack. They surround the city, cutting off all supply routes, and send a message to the governor: surrender now. Pay tribute. Acknowledge Mongol authority, and the city will be spared. Resist, and face total annihilation. The governor miscalculates. He assesses the walls, the soldiers, the stores, and decides he can outweight the Mongols. He refuses. The Mongols act quickly. They divert a nearby river, flooding the city's defensive moat and undermining the walls. Within days, the outer defenses collapse. The Turkish garrison, realizing the battle is lost, attempts a breakout, only to be cut down almost to the last man. The citadel holds for 12 more days, but its fall is inevitable. Every soldier inside is executed. But the civilian population is not immediately massacred. Genghis Khan personally enters the city, riding directly to the Grand Mosque, the holiest site in Bokhara. His soldiers throw sacred Qurans onto the floor, using ornate chests that held holy texts as feed troughs for their horses. Then Genghis orders the city's elite, wealthy merchants, religious leaders, and nobility, to assemble in the mosque courtyard. Imagine standing in that crowd, having witnessed your city collapse, your soldiers slaughtered, and now facing a man whose small frame belies the power in his cold, calculating eyes. He speaks, "I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." Consider the psychological mastery in that statement. He uses their own religious framework as a weapon, presenting himself as divine judgment incarnate. This is theological annihilation. Conquest is not merely physical, it is moral, spiritual, and psychological. And yet, something remarkable follows. The Mongol soldiers do not riot, loot, or massacre indiscriminately. Instead, they begin categorizing the population. Skilled artisans, textile weavers, metalworkers, engineers, scribes are registered. Their talents are noted, and they are told they will be relocated to Karakoram, the Mongol capital, to work under the Khan. Their families may accompany them. Genghis Khan's conquest is not mere chaos. It is systematic. Every skill, every resource, every human being is evaluated, assigned, and incorporated into the empire's machinery. Slavery, previously indiscriminate and violent, becomes organized, rational, and productive. The Yassa's laws may appear progressive, but beneath that veneer lies the ultimate weaponization of people, dividing humanity into protected insiders and exploitable outsiders, creating a society governed by law, fear, and efficiency, with one man at the apex. They'll be fed, housed, and protected as long as they work. It's not freedom, but it's not death either. It's a strange kind of privileged slavery. The second category consists of young, able-bodied men. These are sorted into labor battalions. But here's where it gets truly dark. They are not merely laborers. They become human shields. In the next siege, these men from Bokhara are driven ahead of the Mongol army. They are forced to fill in moats with their own bodies, scale walls, and absorb the first wave of arrows so Mongol soldiers do not have to. It is psychological warfare on a massive scale. Defenders in the next city see their neighbors, their fellow Muslims, pushed forward by Mongol whips. The moral horror of killing their own people often breaks the city's will to fight before the first battle even begins. The third category is women and children, further subdivided. Young, attractive women are distributed as property to Mongol soldiers or sent to slave markets. Some become concubines, others domestic servants. Children are often adopted into Mongol households, not out of kindness, but as a method of cultural assimilation. Raised from a young age, they forget their original language, their original culture, and become functionally Mongol. It is cultural genocide through adoption. The fourth category, elderly, sick, disabled, or those with no useful skills, simply disappears from the historical record. Educated guesses about their fate are grim. Now imagine being one of Genghis Khan's generals, watching this unfold. You have followed this man for years, believed in the Yassa, thought you were building something better than the chaotic, violent life of the steppe. And now, you see an entire city processed like cattle. Human beings reduced to economic units. The same man who forbade the enslavement of Mongols oversees the systematic enslavement of tens of thousands of people. Then it hits you. The Yassa was never meant to protect people. It was meant to protect Mongols. Everyone else exists outside the law. They are resources, assets, property. One Mongol officer, whose account was recorded by Persian historians, described it this way. We had seen cities destroyed before, we had killed without mercy, but this was different. This was organized. It felt like we were farmers harvesting a crop, not warriors conquering an enemy. And I realized that in the Khan's vision, that's exactly what we were. Some generals embraced this reality enthusiastically. They became administrators of human trafficking on an industrial scale, growing wealthy beyond imagination. Others struggled, not because they were squeamish about violence, but because the system violated their understanding of warfare. In traditional steppe combat, you fought your enemy, defeated them, and maybe took some slaves. There was a beginning and an end. This was different. Conquest had become a repeatable industrial process, the bureaucratization of human suffering. And the truly disturbing part? It worked. After Bokhara came Samarkand, then Nishapur, then Baghdad. Each city that fell fed the machine. Estimates suggest that during the Mongol conquests, between 1 and 2 million people were forcibly relocated across the empire. Not counting those killed or enslaved, but kept in their home regions. Consider the logistics of moving 1 million people across 13th century Asia. Record-keeping, supply chains, provisions on the march. The Mongols developed an entire administrative apparatus for managing conquered populations, creating a registry system to track skilled workers across the empire. A blacksmith taken from Bokhara might find himself in Karakoram, working alongside a Chinese engineer and a Russian goldsmith. In a twisted way, it was one of the first truly global workforces. But the system's insidious genius lay in its internal hierarchy among the enslaved. At the top were skilled artisans in Mongol service. They had a strange kind of security. As long as they produced, they were valuable, fed, and their families safe. Below them were domestic servants and concubines. Their fates depended entirely on their owners' whims, but they lived in relative comfort. Agricultural laborers and general workers were below them. They performed the empire's backbreaking work, alive but with minimal chance of advancement. At the very bottom were the human shields, the hasher. Their life expectancy, once assigned to this role, could be measured in months. This hierarchy created internal competition. The artisan did not want to be reclassified as a laborer. The laborer feared being assigned as a human shield. Every level of the system reinforced itself, producing obedience, compliance, and terror. The laborer didn't want to become a hasher, so they worked harder. They didn't rebel. They informed on each other. The system made the enslaved population police itself. Fear became a tool as effective as any whip or sword. The laborer knew that failure, disobedience, or attempts to escape would not only doom him, but potentially doom his companions. And so, even in captivity, people internalized the Mongol system. Every city conquered, every person sorted into categories, reinforced obedience and submission. The economic impact of this system was staggering. Mongol nobles who had once been relatively poor by steppe standards became obscenely wealthy overnight. A single successful campaign could net a Mongol officer dozens of skilled artisans, hundreds of pounds of gold and silver, and invaluable trade contacts. Some generals essentially became industrial-scale human traffickers, selling captives to other parts of the empire or even to foreign markets far beyond the steppe. The Mongol capital of Karakoram, once a tent city, transformed into a cosmopolitan metropolis built by enslaved artisans from a dozen different conquered peoples. Its architecture reflected this human patchwork: Chinese-style roofs, Persian-inspired gardens, European metalwork. The Great Palace itself became a monument to organized exploitation, a visible testament to the industrial-scale efficiency of Genghis Khan's system. But perhaps the most chilling and effective aspect of this system was how it weaponized fear. The Mongols developed a sophisticated propaganda network. Merchants, travelers, and survivors spread tales of entire populations being processed, of the cold, methodical efficiency of Mongol conquest. The psychological impact was immense. Cities surrendered without a fight. They had seen the fate of Bokhara, Samarkand, and other conquered cities. They knew the sorting categories, understood the consequences, and knew the cost of resistance. Many cities opened their gates voluntarily, paid tribute, and provided a percentage of their population for Mongol service. In this way, organized slavery became not just a means of wealth extraction, but a strategic instrument of bloodless conquest. The horror of it was so well known that the mere threat of the Mongol army sufficed to compel compliance. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the system he had designed did not die with him. His sons and grandsons meticulously maintained it. Hulagu, who conquered Baghdad in 1258, employed the same sorting process. Kublai Khan institutionalized it into Chinese law. The Golden Horde in Russia incorporated it into the tribute systems demanded from local princes. In Central Asia, variations of this system persisted into the 19th century, surviving for nearly 600 years after its inception. This continuity demonstrates the sheer structural genius and terror of the framework Genghis had created. What makes Genghis Khan so difficult for historians to assess is this. By the standards of his own people, he was progressive. Promotions were based on merit, not birth. Mongol women were legally protected from abuse. Religious freedom was guaranteed, unprecedented in the medieval world. Crime declined, trade flourished, life expectancy increased under his rule. For the average Mongol, the era of Genghis Khan was a golden age. But that golden age was built upon the systematic dehumanization of everyone else. To view him simply as evil is to misunderstand him. Monsters are chaotic. Genghis Khan was rational. He built systems, created laws, and planned for generations. He designed cruelty with the precision of an engineer and the foresight of a strategist. That methodical, rational cruelty, delivered under the guise of law and order, is more terrifying than any act of random savagery. It is tempting to dismiss the implications of Genghis Khan's methods as purely historical. But the logic of his system, the creation of a protected inner circle while systematically exploiting everyone outside it, is repeated throughout history. Colonial powers in the 18th and 19th centuries followed similar patterns. Britain upheld the rule of law at home while extracting wealth and labor from India and Africa. France proclaimed liberty, equality, and fraternity while maintaining brutal colonial control overseas. The American founding fathers wrote that all men are created equal, while maintaining slavery as an economic institution. The Nazis implemented progressive social policies for Aryan Germans while industrializing genocide for everyone else. The pattern repeats across centuries. Create laws and protections for those within the circle, and treat everyone else as resources. Genghis Khan did not invent this logic, but he perfected it with a precision that made it terrifyingly effective. So how should we judge him? In Mongolia, he is celebrated as a national hero, the founding father of the nation, the man who unified the Mongol people and created an empire. From that perspective, the reverence is understandable. And yet, in Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe, he is remembered as a cataclysmic destroyer. Entire cities and civilizations were erased. The death toll of his conquests is estimated between 30 and 40 million people, roughly 10% of the world's population at the time. Both perspectives are valid, and both are necessary to grasp the uncomfortable truth of his legacy. Returning to the scene that first revealed the system's true horror, Bokhara, Genghis Khan's generals witnessed the sorting of an entire population and realized exactly what they had become part of. Some were troubled, aware of the moral cost, but accepted it as the price of empire. Others embraced it fully, building personal fortunes and prestige from human trafficking on a continental scale. Only a few left written records expressing doubt. Yet none could stop the process. The system was too vast, too efficient, and too integral to the empire's survival. It was impossible to opt out. And here lies the most disturbing lesson of all. People can recognize something as monstrous and still participate because the system makes refusal untenable. Look around today. How many systems exist where individuals know something is fundamentally wrong, yet continue because the machinery is too big, too complex, too embedded in daily life to resist? Where do we draw invisible lines between people who matter and people who do not? How often do we justify inhumanity in the name of efficiency or order? The Mongol system of slavery demonstrates how easily humans rationalize organized cruelty when it is codified in law, enshrined in procedure, and presented as civilization itself. The boy who wore the slave's yoke became the man who built an empire on systematic enslavement. He did it not through chaos, but through order. Not through mindless brutality, but through careful, deliberate legal architecture. That should terrify us more than any tale of simple savagery. If you found this examination of the darker mechanisms of history valuable, subscribe to the channel. Here, the past is not sanitized. We examine how power actually works, how systems of exploitation are built, and how they persist for centuries. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next deep dive into history's machinery of power and terror.